Music and DCM Entertainment. I'm sitting here with Blake McCandless, who is one of our instructors and program directors here at Deep Cove Music. And we're in the DCM studios, our studio below Deep Cove Music, to do what I call my first lesson. So Blake's going to act as my student today, and here we go with what the kind of the typical first lesson that I would give anybody, regardless of their age, regardless of their ability. Sometimes this is a great way for me to figure out where they stand, and it's also a really great way to motivate people in regards to why we're going to be doing certain things in our lessons throughout the years to come as they take music instruction. And it can be for any instrument, from vocals to piano, guitar, bass, doesn't matter. This first lesson kind of shows you and motivates you, hopefully, to why you're going to do the things you're going to do when you're learning music. All right, Blake. First thing that I would ever ask anybody, and you can answer honestly, and if you don't, or you can pretend that you don't know if you just think it would be appropriate. But for the first thing I talk to people about music is that music is simply, I like to compare it to a language. And so if you need to know a language, let's say you and I both know a language, English. Okay, right. I know that we know that one. So what does it take to learn the language of English?
You need to study it, and you need to be.
So what kinds of things would you study in order for it to like make sense and for you to understand it?
Probably like grammar and.
What's the first thing that a little kid would be learning in, like?
The alphabet.
The alphabet, right?
Something like that.
So you need the alphabet, and then what else would you do with the alphabet?
How to make words and
right. So how those the letters work in regards to what sounds they make, and then how they fit into words,
right?
And what those words mean,
and how to make sentences.
And then the words go into sentences, and and then sentences you can be used into phrases, paragraphs, stories, however.
Yeah.
Okay, so and then you learn about the technical aspects, whether they're nouns or verbs or any of that stuff.
Yeah.
And when you're speaking English, do you think about all that stuff, about how the words are spelled, whether they're nouns or any of that stuff? What happens? You think, and it comes out.
Yeah. And
would you say that there are certain words that you don't know still today, or don't use very often?
Yeah.
And so occasionally a new word comes along, and you go, "Hey, I like that word," and you start to adopt it into your vocabulary. Right? Yeah. So you're always, I think people throughout their life are increasing their vocabulary in whatever language they're in.
Right.
Okay. So how does this compare to music? Let's just take it right across. If music is a language, what's the first thing we need to know?
The alphabet.
The alphabet.
Right.
What is the musical alphabet? I mean, it's similar to we use the names of actual English letters in the alphabet. But it's basically notes are what we're talking about here.
Right.
So how many notes are there in the musical alphabet?
Are there 12?
There's 12. And let's talk about what those notes are, starting on A.
So there's A,
and then
there'd be like a B and a C. But
well, what's in between A and B?
There'd also be like a B flat or an A sharp.
So it goes from A, and each of the 12 notes, just to be certain here, they're only a half a tone apart.
Right, that's right.
So from every note, if you went up a half a tone at a time, that would be you'd finally get 12 separate notes, and they always are a half a tone apart.
Right.
So for A, up a half a tone would be what?
A sharp
or
B flat.
And then from B sharp for A sharp, B flat to
B.
To B. And then from B to
C.
So that's kind of weird. B sharp is C and C flat is B. If you don't get that, we'll take a look at that later. But that's a weird spot.
Yeah,
so C to
C sharp, D flat.
C sharp, D flat
to
D.
To
D.
And then D sharp, E flat.
Right.
To E.
Right.
And to F.
Right.
And then to F sharp, G flat.
Yep.
To G. And G sharp, A flat to A.
Perfect. So we get 12 notes. Now, the two spots I often so that people have kind of remember where those weird spots are, where there's no black key on the piano. If we were to take a look, I'll just show the piano. Here is the keyboard. If you see that there's 2 black keys and 3 black keys, and there's spaces in between the two. So if you go to in between the two, the one with 2 and the one with 3, this is a C. So always to the left of any group of 2 is a C. From there you can just go backwards in the alphabet to B and to A. and then you can, that's kind of the starting point if you're going up in order from A. So A sharp or B flat, B to C, because there's no black key. It's a half, and it's a half step from here to here. Each one of these moves is a half step. C to C sharp, D flat, D sharp or E flat, E to F, again, has no black key, F to F sharp or G flat, G to G sharp or A flat, and then you're back to A. So if you count them, you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then you're back to the start. If you want to remember where the spots are that don't have the black keys, I have a fancy little thing that I say here in British Columbia, Canada. Every fool in B, C knows that. And what do they know? That it's a half step from E to F and B to C. Every fool in B, C knows that. So every fool is short for E to F. Every for E, fool for F. B, C. So there you go. Okay, so we've just talked about the 12 tones, and that being our kind of our language starter of the music language, that we need to know the alphabet of the music language, which is the 12 tones. Okay, well, what do we do with these 12 tones? And you know, I think the next question. And when we talked about the English language, you said, well, we build words and phrases and sentences in an English language. Well, to do that in music, we do combine the notes into words or chords. So we use harmony to do that. We start combining the notes together, similarly to combining the notes in the language together to make a word. And then we combine those words together, like which would be like taking the chords of a song and playing them in different orders and different rhythms, and those would slowly build us a body of work, a phrase, you know, a chorus, a verse, a song. And then we also use those notes to improvise melodies and stuff. So the next thing to really think about before we move on from here is, what are the 3 basic elements of all music? What would you say they are? Like,
rhythm.
Rhythm, yes.
Pitch.
Pitch or harmony, I call it.
Okay.
So pitch is basically the notes being put together. That's harmony. Okay, and then what's the top one? So you build a foundation of rhythm, then harmony on top of that, and then melody. So those are the 3 basic elements of all music you're going to have, no matter what kind of music you're involved in. Those are the basic elements.
Okay.
All right, so so far we've talked about the basic elements of the language and the alphabet. Now we need to take a look and see how those guys go together, and that we can build them into the words and eventually use them and stuff. So what we do in music is we do scales. Now everybody goes, why do I need to know scales? Well, this is the foundation of how all music works, and by the end of this lesson, I'll be very surprised if you don't see the whole reason why this works, because it's quite magical, and it's not even that big of a mystery. It's really easy, to be honest. So here it is. Let's take the camera back, point it at the keyboard. Okay, so the next thing is this major scale thing that we've all heard about for years and years. It started off kind of with the Sound of Music, singing do, a deer, a female deer, that kind of thing. Well, that's the basic, they're teaching a major scale, and it goes, you know, you could hear it saying do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. I prefer not to use that kind of thing. I prefer to use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, these notes that I'm using, I'm starting on the key of C. So C major, here's a C, and then you just play all the white notes all the way up to the next C. So it starts on C, then to D, then to E, then to F, G, A, B, and C. This is a major scale, a C major scale. Now, there is a formula for all major scales, and that formula is in whole steps and half steps. So if you think from each one of these notes, when we were doing the 12 tones, those are all half steps. The formula for a major scale is whole step from the first note to the second note, whole step to the second note to the third note, excuse me, then a half step, then a whole step, a whole step, a whole step, and a half step. So the formula is whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, or 2 whole steps, then a half step, then 3 whole steps, and a half step. Now, Blake, I usually get my student to try this out, but basically with that knowledge, anybody can start on any key of the piano and play me a major scale from any one of the keys. So I'll take the camera,
Okay.
and I'm going to ask you to pick a note, any note other than C. Okay, now what's the formula before you go?
It's a whole, half. Whole, half.
Right.
Okay.
So pick a note.
So we go to G.
Okay, so G. Whole step up from G is?
A. And then
Another-
there's another whole, and then it goes to half.
Right.
And then there's a whole.
Yeah.
There's a whole.
Yep.
And then there's supposed to be a whole.
That's a half though.
Oh, that's right.
So you need a whole step from that
So
note.
how do we do that?
Well, you have to do 2 half steps. So
So you go up to here.
that's right.
Okay, so that's a whole.
And then a half
There's
step.
a half.
So the difference between the C major scale and the G major scale was you use all the white notes in the G major scale, except you have to use an F sharp. So in the key of F sharp, or in the key of G, there's F sharps. Okay, pick any other note, and like pick a black key for fun.
Let's say, how about B flat?
Okay, there's a B flat. Now do the formula.
So you got a whole.
Yep, there's great to C,
You have
then a whole,
So
then a
that's
half.
2 holes and then a half.
Right, now 3 holes.
One, two, 3, and then a half.
Good. So you notice then that in the key of B flat, you've got the B flat itself, then you've got a C and a D, then you got to go up to the E flat, and then you've got F and G, and then you got an A, and then you've got the B flat.
Okay.
So you've got B flats and E flats. Okay, so now we know the idea of a major scale, and the formula of the major scale is really easy. It's whole step, half step, whole step, half step. What we now need to know is what to do with it. And what the next kind of a major thing that we're going to do is we're going to do something called intervals. And you need to know the major scale in order to understand intervals. So let's just use the key of C. And what happens is that, first of all, what is the definition of interval, Blake?
The distance between 2 notes?
It is. I mean, and you might think of in general the word interval. It can be it's a description of a distance in time or space.
Right,
So
okay.
you can have an interval of an inch or a centimeter or a mile. You can have intervals, so you're swimming 1 minute intervals in swimming or whatever.
Right,
But
okay.
in music, it's the space between the notes. It's how far is the distance between the 2 notes.
Right, okay.
So if you start on a note, let's say C, and you go to the D, which is the second note in the scale, the distance between these 2 notes is called a major second, because it's the major scale second. And how do you know that? It's a whole step, because the first step in a major scale is whole step. So that's why it's major second. The distance from this C note to the third note is 2 whole steps, or what we call a major third. The distance to the fourth note, thanks to the monks and the monasteries, they started calling these perfect, because the fourths, the fifths, and the octaves sound so perfect when you're harmonizing them. When they were doing their chants, they're in the overtone series, the waves matched most perfectly. So it's not a major fourth, it's a perfect fourth. And then the fifth is a perfect fifth. And then we go back to the distance between the first note and the sixth note is a major sixth. The distance from the first note to the seventh note is a major seventh. And then the distance from the first note to the same note, 8 notes up, is an octave. And why is it called an octave? Well, it's the 8th note. So octagon, octopus, these things have 8 signs and 8 legs or 8 sides. We're in the same position here in music. This is the 8th note, and it comes from the major scale, not from the fact there's 12 notes, because that wouldn't make sense. It comes from the major scale. And as I said, the major scale is the whole thing that sets the tone for all music theory. So if you don't understand a major scale, it's impossible for you to understand the rest of musical theory.
Right.
So here we go. Major second, major third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, major sixth, major 7, perfect octave. Now, there's a few notes that we left out, so it's kind of a simple way to look at it at first. This won't be complete, but this will be a simple way to think about it. If it's a major second and you go from D to D flat, now it's called a minor second. If this is C to E and you go down to E flat, it's not a major third anymore, it's a minor third. that doesn't apply between these two notes because there is no black key. However, you could go from a perfect fourth from an C to an F to an F sharp. Now that would be creating a bigger interval if you were thinking it in that direction. So that would be an augmented fourth because it's being made bigger to augment. But if you're going from the perfect fifth and you're making this a G flat, which is the same note, now you're diminishing that. So this becomes a diminished fifth. Okay, now you've got major sixth. You go down lower from the major sixth, it's a minor sixth. Major seven, you come down, it's a minor seven. And that's kind of the simple way to look at intervals for now. There's a bit more to it, but that's a great way to just get a very quick look at it. And why are we looking at intervals? Intervals are how we build chords. So if you don't understand what an interval is, you don't really know what you're doing when it comes to chords. So let's take a look at a quick chord build. So if you're on the root note, and you take an interval of a major third and an interval of a perfect fifth, and you add them all together, you get a major chord. If you then take that major third, make it a minor third, and the perfect fifth, you get a minor chord. These are 3-note chords, by the way, so they are called triads. Tricycle, triangle, 3 notes, 3 sides, 3 wheels. It's triad. That's where it comes from. Now if you take the minor third and the perfect fifth and you lower it to a diminished fifth, you get a diminished triad. Now if you take the major third and the perfect fifth and you augment the perfect fifth to an augmented fifth, you get an augmented chord. So that's all there is. Major, minor, diminished, and augmented. So now, here's what's getting exciting. I'm trying to make this quick because there's a little bit more to all this, but I'm trying to get to the end of this lesson very quickly to show you and inspire you why we learn scales, why we learn about diatonic chords and all that kind of stuff. So first of all, the next thing is, well, if I use just the notes in the C major scale, what chords can I use? Well, you can just build a chord off of each one of the notes. And if you were to analyze those, the one chord, or the chord built off of the first note, is always a major chord. If you look at the second chord, you would notice that it's a whole step and a half step. This spacing between these two notes is a minor third and a perfect fifth, so this becomes minor. The second chord of any major scale is always going to be minor. Third is always going to be minor as well. Fourth becomes major because you get a major third. Fifth becomes major. Sixth becomes minor, and 7 is diminished with a minor third and a diminished fifth. So an easier way to think about it is just think of it in qualities. Major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished. That's the same for any major scale that you're in. It's always going to be the same. Major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished. So if you call, Blake, if you call out some numbers here, between 1 and 7, we're going to write a song because this is the 1 chord, the 2 chord, the 3, the 4, the 5, the 6, the 7. Okay. And we just have to call out some numbers. So give me some numbers. I got a 1 chord and what else?
6.5? No, just kidding. How about 4?
A 4 chord? What else?
A 2.
A 2 and one more.
Probably a 5.
Okay, so 1, 4, 2, 5. Here we go. I'm just going to double the roots in my left hand so that it sounds nice and strong, and play the triads in my right hand.
Okay.
And here's we go. We're writing a song already. 1, 4, 2, and 5. Okay, so here we are. We're going to be playing, and Blake is going to, he's not a piano player, but he does play piano somewhat, but that's not his first thing. But anybody could do this with one finger. They can just start playing a melody, and that's what I'm going to ask Blake to use is one finger. I'm going to play the chords that he gave me, the 1, the 4, the 2, and the 5. And we're going to just make a song out of the blue. So he knows that all the keys that are white are in the key of C major. We know what the chords are, and we're going to make up a song. And this is the whole point as to why we learn scales, intervals, and that kind of thing. So here we go, and see how we'll just make it up. Here we go. 6 chord. 5 and 4. Minor.
Ooh, very nice.
Back to the original. 1. It sounded great, and we had never played that ever before. It's just, that is the whole purpose, you guys. Understanding scales, how they work, chord progressions, intervals, all that going together. That's why we're doing this. You can write songs, improvise, communicate in the music of language. I mean, the language of music.
Well, we'll work on the language part after this.